Then she received her doctorate of medicine at the University of Tennessee in Memphis. After medical school, Dr. Seddon completed a surgical internship, 3 years of general surgery residency in Memphis. And she was particularly interested in nutrition and surgery patients. She also served as emergency department physician at a number of hospitals in Mississippi and Tennessee. She was selected as an astronaut candidate by NASA in January of 1978. She became an astronaut in August of 1979. Now, I think that I would be taking too much of her time if I went much further with an introduction, because I'm sure that you would rather hear Dr. Seddon than to hear me. So I give you Dr. Rhea Seddon.
Thank you, Ms. Bouts. It's a pleasure to be with you here on Saturday morning, because I know all of you are here because you're interested in expanding your horizons. I feel like one of the luckiest people in the world because my horizons were kind of expanded for me. I became interested in science back in the days when the space program just began, when Sputnik was launched in the late 50s, and there was an emphasis placed on science education because we thought as Americans we were behind the Russians in teaching our young children science. So science became a priority in the schools, and I got interested in it. I became interested even further in the life sciences when I took biology in high school, and was fortunate enough to get into a good university and have a good life sciences program there. There were other things along the way that really helped me understand what adventures might be like. Girl Scouting was certainly one of them. They taught me how to be a part of a team, how to plan projects, and many different things that were very valuable to me later on. I was fortunate enough to be able to take flying lessons when I was in medical school. And then suddenly in 1978, NASA announced that they were looking for astronauts to fly on a space shuttle. I had always hoped that perhaps someday I'd get to fly in space. I always thought it would be as a scientist or perhaps as a doctor on a space station, but I didn't think that there would be many careers for women astronauts because until that point in 1978, they had never taken women into the astronaut program. But in 1978, they decided it was time for women to be a part of the astronaut corps. I was fortunate to be selected in 1978 to be one of the first 6 women that the astronauts. But we were all very successful. We all flew in space, and now there are about 20% of the astronaut corps are women. We're beginning to see women pilots, women test pilots flying. We have several women pilots and many women scientists in the astronaut corps. It's been a very exciting life for me. It's really a dream come true to be able to do these things, but it's all based on getting a good education in science. I brought a film this morning because I could stand here all day and talk to you about what it's like to be an astronaut, and I don't think you really quite understand. So I bought a film today that will show you what one of my shuttle flights was like. I made 3 flights, and this is the middle flight that I made in 1991. And it shows you what a flight is like from beginning to end. I think you get to see people sort of floating around or launches, but you don't understand what really takes place during the whole flight. So I brought a film today. I'd like to show it to you and show you what it's like to really get the payoff for all of that hard work you've done in science. Please move if those of you on the front can't see. This is our crew patch. Each crew gets to design a patch of its own with their names on it. And here we are in June of 1991, getting suited up for launch. We wear the big orange suits in case we have to parachute out of the shuttle during launch or entry. And it takes a while for us to get all of our equipment together. They come in and take pictures of all of us acting silly. We had some rats on our flight, so we have a little mascot. And you can see these pieces of equipment are pretty complex. When you get all of your gear on, it weighs about 85 pounds. So when you're a little person like me, it's sometimes hard to get moving around in those suits. We go out to the launch pad. We're strapped into our seats up at the top of the shuttle. The main engines are turned on, and once the computers check them and make sure that they're up to full power, the boosters ignite, and it's quite a ride from there on. By the time we top the launch tower, we're going over 100 miles an hour. So we get going pretty fast. It's a pretty rocky ride as long as you're on the boosters. There's a lot of vibration, a lot of noise, and as you know, the boosters fire for about 2 minutes. We had a cloudy day this day, and you'll see an interesting picture here as we go through the clouds. A lot of people thought we had taken a turn or that something had happened, but as we come up on it, you'll see that what does happen is there's a shadow of our rocket plume over here to the left. We didn't really go to the left. It was just a shadow that caused a lot of people on the ground to gasp. It makes a pretty picture. It's wonderful to see a launch if you ever get the opportunity. At about 8.5 minutes, our rockets turn off and our engines turn off and we're on orbit. We have to open the cargo bay doors, and this is looking out the window. The blue globe that you see at the top is the Earth. Then we have to get used to working in weightlessness, and this is our pilot, Sid Gutierrez, coming down through our living quarters and through the long tunnel that leads back to our space laboratory. You know, in most laboratories, you set up all of your equipment, and then it can stay set up for years. But our laboratory, we set up, we do our work, and then we have to shut everything down and come back. So part of the early part of the flight is setting up all of the equipment. You see Sid's become very comfortable working in weightlessness. He's doing flips as he comes into the lab. But here's our working laboratory. We've set up all of our equipment, and we've begun the science of our flight. This flight was designed to look at how the human body and other living organisms react to weightlessness. What we have here is Dr. Gaffney on the right has a small catheter, a tube, threaded up his arm, and it goes up to near his heart, and we're measuring the pressure of the blood going into the heart. We know that in weightlessness, a lot of the fluid in your legs is no longer pulled down into your feet. The fluid redistributes, and so you have more fluid near your heart, more blood near your heart, and we wanted to see what that was doing to the pressure of the blood coming into the heart. This is an instrument that uses sound waves, using ultrasound, to look at the heart itself. Dr. Gaffney has a little transducer that emits sound waves. The sound waves come back and are captured by the computer and generate a picture. Those are the valves of my heart beating in weightlessness. And we can see if the heart stretches or contracts with all of that extra fluid around it. We're also concerned with the stretchiness of the blood vessels in the leg. When you come back from space and you stand up, a lot of people get faint, get lightheaded, and we think it's because the blood vessels in the leg get a little stretchier and more of the blood tends to pool down in the legs. So this is an experiment that looks at that, and what we're doing, we have a blood pressure cuff around the top of my leg, and we're measuring how the blood flows in and the blood flows out, so we can understand why people have some trouble when they come back from space, that they can't get the blood back up to their heart as efficiently as you do here on the ground. You can see all the spaghetti of wires over there. All the wires, as you recall, float around in space. This is another experiment that looks at the blood going to your head. When you lie down here on Earth and then suddenly stand up, your heart will beat a little faster because it has to pump the blood up to your head. And so that's a reflex that there's some receptors in your neck, and they learn how to do that for you, how to speed your heart up. Well, in space, you don't lie down and stand up anymore, do you? There's no down and no up. So those reflexes get out of shape. So here on Earth, again, when you stand up, sometimes the heart doesn't speed up enough to keep the blood going to your head. So it's another reason why you might feel faint when you come home. And so we're studying that with this collar that applies pressure and suction to those receptors in your neck. Now, one of the things we study in space quite frequently is exercise. Now, this is a space treadmill. Can you see what's different about it? It has suspenders on it. If you think about it, you can't run on a treadmill in space because you'd float away unless you had